Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB. Be yourself, see yourself. This is a show by people. Belize our hopes for to needless reason. Nobody feel left out. Is the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's how we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes. WB. And all the things that must happen like God blue skies. I love it make people get victimized. Let's work together for better. We got to unite. Belize, yeah. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB. Get up, make every day count. Don't waste it, people. Do your part, play a role, get where you need to. You can tune in for work or in your vehicle. If you got a problem, pick up the phone. Why wait? It's a time calling. It's a show with no matter even if you're at home. Just call in. WB. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB. Be yourself, see yourself. This is a show my people. Belize our hopes so to needless reason. Nobody feel left out. Is the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Love, respect, unselfishness and cooperation. That's how we need to build a strong nation. We are the people to make the changes. We are the changes. WB. And all the things that must happen under God blue skies. I love it make people get victimized. Let's work together for better. We got to unite. Belize, yeah. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. WB.
Good morning. I'm Moderate.
Welcome. This is WUB Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes. It's a Friday morning, the 28th day of March 2025, and also the 28th day of Ramadan. 2 more days for the fasting of Ramadan. Ramadan Mubarak to those who have been fasting. I'm Nuri Muhammad, and we welcome you to the program this morning, the most dynamic conversation that takes place every weekday morning here in Belize City and extends all over the country, and certainly our folks in the diaspora picks it up as well. We welcome you all. Our usual preliminary is that we give you a look at the weather, which is very beautiful in Belize City, very, very nice weather. And then we bring you up to date on the latest news. A little after that, we'll open the phone lines, and then about 7:30, we're expecting two very powerful guests this morning, and we think the conversation will be such that we can open the phone lines and give you a chance to also engage. So we go now to Michelle Augustine.
Good morning. A moderate easterly continue to prevail over the area. The forecast for sunny skies with cloudy spells today and partly cloudy skies tonight. Showers will be generally isolated except for a few more over the south. High temperatures will peak at around 86 Fahrenheit along the coast, 92 Fahrenheit inland, and 79 Fahrenheit up in the hills. Overnight temperatures will be about 79 Fahrenheit over the coast, 71 Fahrenheit inland, and 65 Fahrenheit up in the hills. Winds will blow from the east at 10 to 20 knots, and sea conditions will be moderate. A high tide will occur at 11 minutes after 9 this morning, and low tide occurs at 3:30 this afternoon. The moon will set at 5:33 this evening, followed by sunset at 5 minutes after 6. The outlook for Saturday and Saturday night is for warm and windy conditions with little to no rainfall. In the sargassum forecast, the chances of more sargassum mats affecting beaches across the country remain high, as satellite imagery and surface observations continue to show an increase in sargassum mats over the area. That concludes this morning's weather forecast produced at the National Meteorological Service. For more information, you can log on to our website at nms.gov.bz.
The first in Belize since 1989, Creme FM presents the news. Informative, accurate, current information, local, regional, and international news, weather and sports. And now, the news.
The Belize Sugar Industry Cane Farmers Association, Belize Sugar Cane Farmers Association, the BSCFA, in a letter to the Prime Minister dated March 25th, expressed concerns about the removal of the sugar industry portfolio from Minister of Agriculture, Jose Mai. As we have reported, the PM will now oversee the industry as substantive minister, while Dr. Osman Martinez will have day-to-day oversight of the industry. The BSCFA writes that the decision, quote, seemingly was influenced by an emergency meeting with the owners and managers of the ASR Group, a multinational corporation that owns the only sugar mill here in the north, end of quote. The BSCFA questions how addressing serious concerns raised by ASR as to the handling of the sugar industry can, quote, directly impact the assignment of portfolios in the cabinet, end of quote. BSCFA adds that they are, quote, yet to learn what else was required from your government by ASR owners and managers, end of quote. According to the association, the cane farmers may very well now find themselves, quote, at the mercy of multinational interests rather than supported by a government that champions their rights and well-being, end of quote. The BSCFA points out that they recognize the aptitude of Dr. Martinez, but as compared to Minister Mai, they say he lacks the experience and knowledge of the intricacies of the sugar industry. They call on PM to recognize that the portfolio requires someone who stands up for the needs and for the needs of the sugarcane farmers. They add, quote, the future of our local sugar and cane farmers must not be dictated solely by the profit-driven motives of the multinational corporations, but by policies that respect and support the farmers who contribute so much to our country's economy, end of quote. Here is how the Prime Minister responded about the letter on Thursday.
I am going to be kind to the BSCF here. And first of all, that they are not the Prime Minister. If Fred Ortega or any one of them to be Prime Minister, put their name on the ballot, and someday they can be the Prime Minister and make those decisions. When I make decisions in setting up a cabinet, I try to look at from different angles, so where I think I could best get, I could put the best team forward. And I believe that that's exactly what I have done. And I have the reasons why I brought the sugar industry in under my position. I want the industry is in crisis, and we have to give it the highest priority. If they can't realize that, then that the industry is in crisis, then they are the problem, because they are in crisis themselves as an association. But I don't want to get back and forth with them. I found their letter very insulting, but I will leave it as that.
The sugar crop in northern Belize was halted on February 19 due to a confluence of challenges, including negative effects of climate change, pest infestation, and bad sugar roads that led to reduced production and quality. The crop remained on pause for 12 days and resumed on March 4th. The chairman of the Sugar Industries Control Board, Marcos Osorio, stated this week, Tuesday, that they have noted some improvement in cane quality, but concerns about purity remains. Unfortunately, the improvement is not at the level that they would have expected, and he says quality will continue to be impacted for the rest of the season.
Since we started, we have seen an improvement on cane quality. I think, though there is still concern in terms of, for example, when we look at the purities to date, up to yesterday, the purities are at 79.21 overall. When we made the stop in which was February 19. At that time, the purity was at 77, the overall. So from 77 to 79, we have improved 2 points. Then in terms of TCTS, at the stop or the suspension of the harvesting, our TCTS was over 14. Presently, we are at 13.34 overall. And I think it is important to mention that the TCTS to yesterday, for yesterday's milling, stood at 12.72, which, yes, there is an improvement, but the improvement is not the what we would have expected. That maybe we would have been at around 11 TCTS at this time. It is improving, but the improvement is pretty much slow, and this is basically attributed to and we also, I think it's important to mention that we do not anticipate a major improvement from now to end of the crop. Why? Because I think the weather factor is playing a critical role in the present quality situation we're seeing. We had too much rain or too much water in fields which impacted on cane quality, and that cane quality, we are seeing impacts even at this point of the harvest season when quality should be peaking at this time.
The mill is now operating at a higher rate than when the crop was forced to stop, but the field production is not keeping pace. Osorio explains what are the contributing factors.
We are looking at what else can we do to see if the field can increase their delivery per day. But all indications are that the best is around 6,500 per day. And the mill is saying they're prepared to be doing 7,000, given that we are at the best time in terms of weather, in terms of cane quality, but also a major factor that is affecting is the labor. There is not enough labor. And even though we have seen an introduction of whole stock cane cutters, mechanical harvesters on the side of the farmers, still the capacity is not there, because then we are also facing a situation where the turnaround of the transport units is also affecting, because if there would be a good time between the turnaround to their next delivery, then there could be an opportunity that where we can do maybe 200 more tons per day.
As Prime Minister John Bersenio begins his second term in power, there will also be a review of ambassadorial appointments. The PM told us on Wednesday that the changes will be decided in conjunction with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Honorable Francis Fonseca.
We will change a number of them, as we usually do, after 4 to 5 years. But I have to sit down right now with Minister Fonseca, as the Foreign Minister, to have that discussion.
In particular, the U.S. ambassador, a very important portfolio now. Do you change out Mr. Young?
Again, I will be discussing with Minister Fonseca, and then we will come to decide which are the changes and where, and then the who we want to put.
Last week, the proprietors of OMG Cafe on the ground floor of the Belize City Hall complained in a Facebook Live broadcast that they are being forced by police to remove their menu banner off the railing in front of their rented portion of the building. They complained that the establishment adjacent to them is allowed to have their signs up. Yesterday, the mayor of Belize, Bernard Wagner, said that the lease agreement included the types of signage that were allowed and that the proprietors had been unwilling to comply. Wagner said that his city council has been very supportive of small businesses owners.
Listen, Belize City Council is the council that has been the greatest supporter of small businesses. And so when I hear those comments, it's nonsense. We have created a sort of platform that have driven small business. We were the leaders in entrepreneurship, in developing entrepreneurship in the city, by just the mere fact that we have this super sale where we don't charge any of these vendors. It's a small fee to get a small space, but we create all the marketing of that event. We create all the entertainment for that event. So we are glad when small businesses are able to thrive in our city. Local economic development is one of our pillars at the City Hall, and so that's nonsense. We continue to push for entrepreneurship, but you must have some measure of control in your spaces, and I don't think it's anything ridiculous that we are asking from the vendors. The vendors signed a lease agreement, and the lease agreement clearly specified that we do not want any sort of advertisement that does not meet up to the standard of the City Hall. We have also been telling those vendors in the lower flat that we will create a sort of a marketing mechanism, a really professional standard directory, so to speak, where it will be lit up at night and it will clearly show who all are the vendors in that facility. but it takes time, and you have to have patience in everything you do, and there's no need for this big ruckus being created over something simple that we can sit around a table and really come to a
G's Cafe banner is still up, and the mayor said that he will meet with the proprietors to arrive at a final agreement over the situation.
The sign is still there though, even after police and the enforcement department went.
So they are actually not complying with our requests, and that is not nice.
So what happens now then?
Not nice. So I'll sit down with those individuals. I just came back in the city this past Tuesday, and so I personally will have to sit with the vendors, and we'll have to be very pragmatic about it, and I'm hoping that clearer heads will prevail.
And that's our news package for this morning, the 28th day of March 2025. There's more news coming up throughout the day, actually. There's one at 12 noon right after the morning stew. Also one at 3 o'clock and a full news broadcast at 5:15, all this on Creme Radio. Here on XTV, we bring you the entire news broadcast at 6 o'clock this evening. It's now 10 minutes to 7 o'clock. We'll take a short break, open the phone lines, and we'll begin the conversation for Friday morning.
The first private radio in Belize since 1989. The news. Informative, accurate.
back. This is WUB, Wake Up Belize Morning Vibes, a Friday morning edition. As I said, we do have some guests coming in a little bit after 7:30. But I wanted to introduce a topic this morning for discussion. I'll read a few things here, and it's quite controversial, but I'd hope that you will call in and we'll use the first half hour of the show to try and throw this idea around. It's been discussed by religious people. Evan Hyde and myself have this conversation quite often. And a few days ago, I had the conversation again with Mr. Henry Young, who suggested that I ought to bring it up because there are more than likely many people that would want to hear about this. So I decided to do a little research, and here is the result of my research. We're going to talk about conjugal visit. What is conjugal visit? Conjugal visits is scheduled period of time during which an inmate is allowed to spend private time with a spouse or partner, usually in a specified designed or designated area of the prison, often a small house or apartment room within the prison grounds. These visits can last from a few hours to a few days and are intended to preserve family bond as well as to reduce negative effects of incarceration. How does it work? Eligibility. Not all inmates qualify. Factors like behavior, sentence length, and security issues are given serious consideration. In some places, only legally married spouses are allowed. Others allow common law, as long as it is a structured common law relationship. Application. Inmates usually have to apply and be approved for such visits. Background checks on their partners may also be conducted. Supervision. While the visits are private, they occur in a secure area with strict entry and exit protocols. The purpose of conjugal visits are to maintain family and spousal relationships, to improve inmate behavior as a reward, to support rehabilitation and to reduce recidivism, and to promote emotional well-being. Here are some of the countries, it says here, that allows it. In the United States, where I worked at one time in California, in some of the prisons there, it is allowed. It is also allowed in New York as well as Washington State in certain facilities. No federal prisons allow conjugal visits. Usually, they are limited to spouses or registered domestic partners. In Canada, it's known as private family visits. It is available to inmates with spouses or common law partners. It can last up to 72 hours, as well as and is always located in a compound, in a house in the compound of the prison itself. In Mexico, it is widely practiced in that country. Inmates are allowed to have visits from spouses and partners, and even sometimes girlfriends. In Brazil, it is allowed as part of prisoners' rights, and it applies to both heterosexual as well as same-sex couples. In Germany, some prisons permit private family visits, including conjugal visits with family members, meaning also children. In Spain, it offers immediate, intimate family visits to inmates who are in good standing. In France, private rooms are provided for such visits. In Saudi Arabia, it uniquely allows conjugal visits for married inmates with support from the religious as well as cultural practices. In Iran, permits conjugal visits for married couples under regulated conditions. Countries that do not allow conjugal visits, the United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, India, South Africa, and these are some of those who will not permit conjugal visits. Now, Should we have conjugal visits in Belize? The argument is that under certain conditions, there are inmates who are spending time, they are married, unfortunately, because of their criminal act. Sometimes it's not violence, sometimes it has nothing to do with murder or such things, but they are not permitted to have conjugal visits. So the question to you this morning is, and if you want to participate in this conversation, please call 280-5848. Should we allow inmates in Belize to have access over their sentence period to have visits from their wives? We're talking about not just visit through the box as is normally done now, or family days, but to actually have intimate relations with their wives. There is one of the proponents of it says that one of the things that happen in prisons is what you call circumstantial homosexuality. That means men who are away from contact with women for a prolonged period of time because of sexual needs and desires begin to move in a direction where they would not normally in free society do it, but under the compulsion of living in those conditions, they succumb to having homosexual relations, which is not permitted in the prison, of course. It's against the rules, but it happens. It's a reality. And then there's the joke about don't drop the soap and all these type of jokes, which is not a joke, but is usually associated with what happens in prison, especially when young prisoners enter the facility and they're older, seasoned prisoners that have not seen the street, have not had no contact with women 10, 15 years, it becomes an issue. So do you believe that it ought to be considered in Belize? Do you believe that the government itself should take that into consideration in a policy statement in regards to conjugal visits? As again, I say that conjugal visits is not a widespread thing. It's not a worldwide thing. Only in Brazil is it considered part of the human rights of prisoners. But in other areas, it is allowed by the state because they have determined that it has more benefit than it has harm. Our phone number's here, 280-5848. What do you think about that idea? Should we do it? Or left them there, as we'd like to say, if they never want to go there, they wouldn't have commit the crime. We have a lot of ways in which we deal with those people who are the others in our society. Should they be allowed to do this? Do they have a right to have conjugal visit? In some areas where I have worked, you have had accusations of even female warders or female correctional officers being caught in compromising conditions that was very embarrassing. Other auxiliary staff, medical staff, and others have been caught in compromising situations because a man in prison can become extremely charming. He could be an absolute nice and beautiful talker, and sometimes it becomes a compromising situation. I'm not saying that that is going on in the central prison of Belize. I'm saying I have seen it and read about it where female correctional officers find themselves in such a situation. And in those jurisdictions where female prisoners or female inmates who have just as much need as male inmates, those male correctional officers in those prisons have been accused of rape. There have been women who were serving life sentences that end up being pregnant. Obviously, it's not female inmates that's causing the impregnation. It had to have been those male officers that are put in female institutions to mind. I don't think we have that in Belize. in Belize we have only female officers. But what if the female officer is a same-sex person? Is her temptation to satisfy the needs of these female inmates that may have these needs? Is that something that we should allow to happen? So it's a subject that I realize we don't want to broach. We don't want to discuss that. Some people might say, what the hell is wrong with Nuri early in the morning to talk about that kind of thing, yeah, when we have with breakfast? But when do we discuss it? And where do we discuss it? And if it is a policy established in some areas, why shouldn't it be a discussion? And why shouldn't we say, conclusively, we don't want to have nothing to do with that? We have not said that. It hasn't been discussed. It's never been brought up officially as a conversation. I'm sure it's never been even presented to the AG that we ought to consider introducing such legislation to be considered. So it is, and I guess we cannot get nobody even want to discuss this issue. But I did promise in my conversation with those brothers that we would bring it up and, see whether or not we can get some traction and we could get some conversation around the subject. It's important. It's important. All right. Our number is 280-5848. We could drop the conjugal visit thing and move on to some other areas. And, you're free to do that because we are guided by you in this show. The other area, of course, is the special arrangement that has been given to the Commissioner of Police, Chester Williams, who has been offered the position of CEO in the Ministry of Transport and Governance, Indigenous Affairs, Religious Affairs, and Constitutional Affairs. And when all the CEOs that have been announced have pretty much taken up their position, he has requested additional time, which he has been given, and was given very high accolades by the Prime Minister a couple of days ago, who big up Mr. Williams in ways that, like he's the best commissioner that the country has ever seen. His record speaks for itself. And so if he's requested some time, then certainly he has no problem as the Prime Minister, who is the one that decides who will be CEO and where they will go. Justification by Attorney Williams is that he has some matters that he would like to bring to a close before he hands over to the commissioner designate, who is Dr. Richard Rosado. And one of those things that he's mentioned publicly is that the new recruits, which came in under his tenure and will end in June, that he would want to see that also completed. And so he's been given time. What's your thoughts? Is he being treated as a special person? Clearly he is, but do you think he deserves it? His record speaks for itself, not because I work closely with Chester Williams. Even if I didn't, it is obvious that he has done something remarkable when it comes to the crime statistics in Belize, and the numbers speak for itself. We could quibble about, is it this number a few or three numbers different than the last year, that sort of thing. But the drastic reduction in terms of the amount of murders and other serious crimes is there statistically to see. So while every person has their own upside and downside, and you can point out certain areas that you feel that Chester Williams needs some adjustment in your eyes, clearly there's no denying that what he has done in terms of the crime management situation in the country has been outstanding, and that Dr. Richard Rosado, who has been working very closely with Commissioner Williams, truly has a big task in front of him to maintain those numbers that has been established by Commissioner Chester Williams. Our number is 280-5848, and you can feel free to weigh in. Another area is this matter of what are we going to do with the threat of the United States that if we continue to, I'll use the word entertain this relationship with Cuba, where its medical brigades have come in and served this country over the last almost 30 years. If we don't reduce that, sound like it is said, if we don't send them home, then officials are going to face repercussions as far as their visa. And this is not a threat to Belize. This has been a blanket threat to all areas where the Cuban Medical Brigade and also other support, because Cuba has sent its people out not only to help with health, but also with agriculture, with construction, with building of airports and different areas. They have used the high level of technical training that Cubans have had to assist developing countries around the world. As a matter of fact, I could remember during Hurricane Katrina, if you remember, Castro allowed, or not allowed, but well, he suggested to the United States, because they didn't accept it, that he's willing to send some of his medical brigade into New Orleans, into that area, to assist in the recouping of the country, or I'm sorry, of the state after Hurricane Katrina. And so what is being proposed by Mr. Trump is that if you continue to allow this terrorist state, wants to return Cuba to this terrorist state, terrorist category, that you will be penalized. And they have been in the news that Ralph Gonzalez, Dr. Ralph Gonzalez of St. Vincent, and Mia Motley of Barbados have come out very strong and said, listen, take the visa, but we're not going to disparage these persons who have been a major assistance to our medical needs here in Barbados, as well as in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we have had this relationship all this time with Cuba. Are we going to succumb? Are we going to bend over? So far, the statements coming directly from the Prime Minister is that no, we're not going to do it. But if the threats are in fact pushed to the limit and visas begin to get canceled, will we capitulate? And by the way, we haven't heard from Jamaica except statements like the statement of the Prime Minister that no, we don't agree with this and we're not sending people home. But do we have Caribbean leaders like Mia Motley and Ralph Gonzalez coming out very strongly and speaking truth to power and saying, no, we will not do it, and you could take your visa if you have to take your visa, but we will not disparage and send these people home when these people have dedicated years of assisting in our health needs in our area. So, what do you think about this? Again, we've seen the Prime Minister do some backstepping when it comes to the support and advocacy that we've made in regards to Israel and its genocidal moves in the Gaza. You can't call it anything but genocidal. And you can see that even after a ceasefire that took months and months to broker, and an agreement was finally signed by the Israeli and Hamas that it has been broken. And who broke it? Netanyahu again. And we need to understand that the return to, I'd say, this genocidal plan, in just a matter of 10 days, over 700 people, and this includes not combatants, this includes men, women, and children, non-combatants, have been killed since the resumption of the bombing campaign. And the United Nations has condemned it, the world bodies have condemned it, but it hasn't stopped. And it is an obvious violation of human rights. It's a violation, it's a criminal act. It breaks all international protocols. But it's as though you don't dare criticize Israel for doing things that we used to say, look at that Idi Amin and what you did do. Look at that Pinochet and what you did do. Look at, we used to have, like throw dirty water upon all kind of leaders of country who did things that were far less than what we see Netanyahu doing. But they were condemned, in fact, put out of the United Nations, sanctioned. In the case of Liberia, the leader was taken to the international court. Before that, he was locked up and then brought to the international court, the International Criminal Court, and sentenced. And Charles Taylor is serving time now for his atrocities, which were called genocidal, in Liberia. Yet we have a hands-off, a fear to even touch Netanyahu, though we are seeing this genocide being carried out in real time. So when Briceño was asked, why is it that you are pulling back from The Hague? Why is it that you're pulling back? Because, there was a group of nations that came forward that joined together. I believe it was called the Hague Group. He pulled back from the Hague Group. He's also pulled back from the interested persons category that we were with the South Africans accusing Israel of genocide, taken to court. He's pulled back from that. And his rationale was that Damande Atapde, he has levers that he could put pressure on Belize and make things very uncomfortable for us in other areas. So we've already shown our moral support for Palestine. We have not backed down from our moral support for Palestine. And by the way, if you don't know, that when this atrocity started after October 7th, Belize was one of 6 countries that stepped up and condemned the actions of Israel. Not only that, we suspended diplomatic relations with them, which was a very powerful thing to do as a little small country in the category that they put us, small country. Israel smaller than we, by the way, but small country that took a position long before many other countries joined on. So don't let that pass in your history, that Belize, as small as we were, took a principled position and said, true to power, Israel, what you're doing is wrong. And we stand behind the Palestinian people. And by November of that year, which was like not more than about 7 or 8 weeks after the atrocities started in October 7th, we were out in the streets, including the Prime Minister, Johnny Briceño, including the former Prime Minister, Dean Barrow, who also has a very strong and unequivocal position similar to that of the government of the day. Because it's not a political situation. It's a principled situation. So that march didn't have just a few radicals. it had people across the board from every part of the country, every ethnic group, every religious group was out there, particularly young people that stood up and said, no, Israel, what you're doing is unfair, it is unjust, it's ungodly. You can't even use the Bible or the Torah to try to justify what you're doing there. It is a criminal act that you're doing. So we have stood up. We have gone further with Ambassador Assad Schuman to make a very powerful statement at The Hague, criticizing not only Israel, but speaking truth to power and criticizing the United States of America, which takes an enormous amount of cojones for a small country who are normally intimidated, afraid to even speak to those powerful nations. He spoke truth to power by saying not only is Israel wrong in doing what they're doing, but for the United States to be complicit on the world stage, vetoing those resolutions brought by the United Nations, which is the world body. The world body condemned what they were doing, what Israel was doing, and the United States vetoed those resolutions. So we need to understand the context in which we are operating, and we hope with our two guests coming in today who are very international in their writings and in their statements, can give us their opinion on what this matter means, both Cuba and the issue of Palestine. We'll take our first break for 2 Cents Cam, hosted by our brother from called Brick City, Brother Winston, and that is sponsored by the Fort Point Security Company.
You're watching WUB and this is XTV and a Big Up Friday. Somebody could big up some people on the Friday. So, Big Up Friday, who you want big up?
Big up me, man.
But you have to give me your name.
Big up your wife. Yeah, I don't like that.
All right.
I don't like that. I don't like problem.
Now you're big up. Who you big up? Big up yourself.
Friday?
Yeah. Who you big up?
Big up the family.
Don't say it.
Yes, sir.
Who you want big up?
Big up myself, my ma, my baby, my daughter.
That is it. Now you're big up. Huh?
Michelle.
Michelle? All right, big up yourself, Michelle. Friday, who you want big up? Who you want big up? Big up Friday. All right.
Morning Vibes. It's a Friday morning and we have another explosive conversation for you this morning. Our guest is Dr. Harold A. Young as well as Dr. Dylan Vernon. They are both distinguished Belizean scholars with significant contributions to political science and governance in our country. Dr. Young serves as an associate professor in the Department of Political Science and Public Management at Austin Peay State University in Tennessee. He holds a PhD in political science at Georgia State University and a JD from the University of the West Indies Norman Manley Law School. Notably, he has explored the role of the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council and the Caribbean Court of Justice. Dr. Dylan Vernon, who has been here several times, has over the last 3 decades experience in international development, governance, reform, and public policy. He served as Belize's ambassador to the European Union, the World Trade Organization, and several European states from 2013 to 2020. Prior to his diplomatic roles, Dr. Vernon directed the Society for the Promotion of Education and Research, SPARE, managed the Belize UNDP office, and chaired the Political Reform Commission from 1999 to 2000. He holds a PhD in Caribbean and Latin American politics from the University College of London and has authored several academic publications, including a very important book in 2022 called Political Clientism and Democracy in Belize, From My Hand to Yours. He's currently the executive director of the Belize Policy Research Institute at the University of Belize and continues to be involved in public discussion on the Belize landscape. And that is one of the reasons that we have them both here today. Welcome, brothers.
Thank
Morning,
you.
Nuri. Morning, Belize.
Good morning. That was a very long introduction.
Yes.
Yes. I say I have a choir of drums. I don't want people to say that who here or when. Most people, I think, know you already, but we have a broad audience, and we need to ensure that people know who is talking here and we don't just blow a breeze.
Yes.
Let's start with the March 12th elections and the controversies that came up during and after that election. We saw a very unusual set of circumstances take place with one of our major political parties, that is the United Democratic Party. We also had accusations of paying people to vote. There was even a clip of a political officer of one of the political parties being in the area that they were not supposed to be, taking pictures of the the poll that this person was giving or vote that he was giving. All of this with a backdrop from the OAS that said that we had a very fair, very smooth running elections. So you're on the ground, so give us your impressions of the March 12th general elections and those controversies that have come out. Let's start with you, Vernon. Dylan.
Thanks, Nuri, and good morning again, everyone. While I'm the executive director of the Belize Policy Research at UB, I am not today appearing in that capacity. I'm in my own individual capacity.
All right.
I like to make that clear.
Yes. Disclaimers are necessary.
But I'll talk about the Institute later on, perhaps. This election, I think, you put your finger on it, was actually, in effect, more about resolving a UDP division that preceded the election than almost anything else. We ended up with the same status quo, 26-5, and I think if there are any big picture headlines, that would be one. Nothing changed in terms of the balance of power in terms of the House. It was always going to be whether the UDP 5 seats could be retained, and they retained 5, but as we know, Patrick Faber lost in Collett, and then they gained one in Kaya West, so the same amount. It was, importantly for me, not the least policy discussion election I've ever seen for a long time. I mean, and that has a lot to do with the fact that the opposition didn't step up, and so the incumbent basically was given a free ride in terms of policy debate. And yes, the election did clarify UDP leadership, but an election, I suppose, is not supposed to do that. It's supposed to be done internally with the party. But that did not happen. Historically, we have a female, the first female leader of the opposition. Another headline for me related to the fact that is related to the fact that women decreased from 4 to 3 in the House. But we have a leader of the opposition who is a female. And I mean, overall for me, we can go into these. The elections amplified for me what is wrong with the system.
Okay.
And these are things like the need for electoral reform. We saw right after the election, when we get to the cabinet, that all the 26 elected PUP representatives either are ministers or ministers of state. They're all in the executive. And so that fusion that was there before, I mean, is the same.
It's maintained.
It's maintained, and then there are 2 senators who are now also with cabinet rank.
Well, let me go to Harold, and then what we'll do is unpack that a little bit more.
And the last thing I would say, the 2 last things I would say in terms of my big picture is what is called PUDism continues. I mean, it's there.
It's entrenched now.
And who run things, who own things. I mean, nothing has changed there. So substantively, the election did not change much. It was not a change election. It was basically reinforcing the status quo.
What do you think of the level of public quarrel that the UDP participated in? And I'm asking you this, Brother Young, and the fact that you heard statements like the person who won in the Messop area saying to the public that really I'm here to make sure that Shine Barrow doesn't win. I don't know if what he meant there is that as long as Shine never win, but was not thinking of winning himself, as if he was going to give it over to Ellis. But the reality is that his campaign strategy was so financed and dynamic in that area, born and growing up also in that area, that he won. And it almost as if you see him, when the numbers were counted, it was like a surprise on his face. But how do you analyze what took place there in the context then of, did anything change substantially with the March 12th election?
Well, there were 2 elections, as Dr. Brennan said. There was an election, one of it was to try to decide the leadership of the UDP, which is what you were just talking about. And the other one was to pick the new government, right? So the election was the same and different, was both the same and different in that sense. I think while it wasn't, like Dr. Vernon said, a lot of policy discussions, there was a clear challenge by the PUP to the electorate, to people, look at what we have done and vote based on that. He did not rarely mention the opposition. He said, look at what we've done and vote on that. So that was sort of refreshing, like he was saying, hold me accountable or hold the government accountable for what we did. And wasn't busy talking about how horrible the opposition was. Didn't spend a lot of time on
was there a need for
campaigning.
That?
Well, the point is that he took that opportunity. He took the opportunity to do that. And I think that's something that should be carried on, where people are running a record, not necessarily just trying to tear down the other side. I mean, some of that will always happen, but that shouldn't be the focus. So that's the first thing. The leadership issue with the UDP, and specifically the one you talked about, which was impactful. Besides Tracy's rise to leadership, it was impactful in the sense of removing Shine Bar from having a constituency, from being a representative, I think speaks to, and we can talk about some of the details, but to the meta issue, to the big issue, it speaks to the problem we have with the structures of elections that govern how parties operate.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the parties respond, parties, voters, and the government respond to the electoral structure.
Right.
So if the structure allows this, not allows, but supports this sort of public stuff, then that's what's going to happen. So it was a reflection of the party discipline. It was a reflection of how parties function in our system. And there are ways, which we can get into later, that you can adjust the structure of the electoral process and the governing process that makes parties behave differently, and voters behave differently. And I'd like to talk a bit later about how voters perceive voting, right? Double rational choice voting and stuff like that. So it points to the need to transform our constituents or constitution as the #1 legal document in the country. So it really points to that. And that is a very difficult thing to do, not just to do it, but a very difficult thing for us to wrap our minds around, because we are comfortable with the pain. So we whine and we complain about all the things that are wrong, but when you want to change it, you already know these problems. And when you want to change it, you're like, well, I don't know what kind of problems will come in the future, so let me stick with what we have, right? And I completely understand that. I feel that way many times. But I think that our better nature should try and encourage us to move on. The last thing I want to say is that I want to give credit to the people who did come out and vote. We can critique it and say, yes, some people were paid, yes, there was, negative voting or the party machinery did it. But the point is that people came out and voted. We've seen countries in the Caribbean where the turnout for national elections are less than 50%. So we have to give credit to people for coming out and voted, considering in the circumstances, or in any circumstances. And I'd like to do that.
That's another headline right there.
Yes.
The voter turnout was the least since
was the lowest
at
since independence. 64% of the vote, 65% of the vote.
We did come out, but we came out
lower. But the point is that they did come out. There were predictions it would have been lower than that. Dr. Vernon and I have talked about that, and there were some people saying it's going to be lower than that. So let's give credit where credit is due, that people did come out. And that's something that we need. That sort of engagement is what we need to propel and encourage transformation, change in the country.
The PUP, when they were going through their internal conflicts, remember, after Said Musa, there was some craziness.
Yes.
And perhaps the big difference was that the UDP quarreled in the street, while the PUP got in a closed room and only heard knives back there. But you didn't know specifically what was going on. But we remember the speech of the present leader when he was calling out the former leadership, accusing them of corruption, etc., which was pretty unusual for a PUP to be criticizing a PUP like that. There was the assumption that Mark Espat would have risen naturally towards the leadership, and then suddenly a back off that I don't want it, which was again unusual.
3 changes of leaders in a very short time.
In that part, we have him as well as Francis Fonseca, etc. So compare how one political party dealt with its internal conflicts and combustion compared to this one that was just like in the streets. What does that say about our political maturity or lack thereof?
Well, I don't know if I see much there, because I think it could happen to either party. That actually, I remember during the 2008 when the first election happened, Francis Fonseca, I think, had become leader then. The headlines were every day. The PUP is divided, and there were these arguments. It was raw. But what happened with the UDP makes that all look quaint, and you totally forget about, because it was so much more raw. it's a different approach. But for me, the key overall takeaway from that for me is that both in the PUP example after 2008 and the recent UDP example, there were internal party disputes over what? Anything substantive? Was it ideology? Was it policy? I don't think so. It was about, which individuals will control the party in the same system that we are now. And so for me, they're like entertaining, but not substantive to our development or democracy in any way.
You're saying that all the parties basically ideologically felt the same, did the same, but there was just personality differences?
I mean, interesting, but not. I mean, who becomes leader does make a difference. I mean, you have to
so the platform
concede that, but it wasn't over big policy differences and issues, which the last election wasn't either at the national level, and so it really is continue to do the same thing. And at the micro level is the parties, and the macro level is at the national election.
Well, I will add to that because we only got a limited issue here, so I'm trying to pack a lot of stuff on you. But the label of PUDP, which has been on both parties over the last 20, 25 years, doesn't it come out of the fact that there's not a substantial difference between the ideology of the two parties except for personalities?
Well, I do think it's entertaining. I think it's entertaining. But I think a more serious view of what went on. I think what we saw was a demonstration of different party environments and culture. The PUP culture is far more uniform, even though they have factions within it. They don't play a lot of the dirty laundry on the street, right? The ideological difference, we know there used to be. The factions in the PUP in the late 70s and in the 80s was definitely ideological factions within the party fighting.
Very clear.
Right, that was very clear.
And made them different than the UDP.
And was different, and yes, and it was different from the ideology of the UDP.
Right.
The other thing is that I think that with the rise of the current Prime Minister, Mr. President, there was some ideological difference in that they were pushing back against some of this neoliberal, sell all the assets led by Ralph Fonseca and his group, that sort of extreme neoliberal policies, right? So there is some ideological difference. And then to look at this one, we see the UDP itself showed that it's still a mixture of a bunch of parties that form the UDP. You still saw sort of like a liberal, and I'll say who I think is on that side. So they have the liberal, sort of like PDM, the NIP, still showing their colors within the party. And I think that a little deeper dive, they listen more carefully to Shine Barrow when he was before the elections. He had some very distinct ideological differences.
As an individual.
As an individual. And but he also felt that he could impress us in the party because he felt the party was his, right? That there were some ideological differences. He was far more laissez-faire in some ways. Far more authoritarian in some ways about what the government should be doing. He talked about taking over the health system, taking over the gas distribution. The government must be more involved. You know, he had some things which wasn't as clear. I agree, it's kind of murky, but he did show some tendencies like that. Now I think that's kind of dissipated. That's kind of dissipated. But I think it goes back, the lack of ideology goes back to the structure of the system. The parties don't need that to win. All you need to win is 16 seats by one vote. So you need 16 votes to win a national elections in Belize. 16 votes in the entire country. If you get 16 votes in the right constituencies, over 50%, you will win the government. And once you need that, then you don't need ideology.
Can I add to that? Yeah. The lack of policy and ideological differences, and basically how the term PUDP came about is that people saw, since independence, as parties changed, that things remain the same. Yeah. And the problems persist. and we're sort of incrementally doing something, and then one party would pretend it's the beginning again, and short-termism. But the key point I wanted to make was that because of that, the parties began to compete more and more on who has the best handout machine, who can best buy elections, buy democracy in a sense, and buy access to influence.
All right, you jump into my second point. So let me take
and who does that better
is
the one that will have the power. So, but that diminishes even more the interest in ideology.
All right.
Because
you don't need it.
You don't need it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, indeed. So ideology has become actually an old word that people don't relate to.
Yeah.
It's not so much what I believe in as much as how I can make you think that I can satisfy what are your needs, not what
you can give me.
Ideologically, So again, but that's part of my second thing when we're going to jump into this idea of political clientelism. So let's take the first break, second break, and then we'll come back. We'll jump in a second time.
Enhanced
All right, interesting conversation with Dr. Vernon and Dr. Young, looking at ourselves, and I hope they don't pull any punches because young people are listening, and really it depends on a new mind, a new dispensation, so to speak. We cannot continue to be accused of a PUDP system. But off the break, both of them are showing me why the PUDP is sort of like, that's what we get. So can we expound on, and go to you, Brother Young, on your insistence that with the system that we're running, we're not going to get those kind of distinctions because it's not there. Elaborate.
Yeah, so as I started off saying in the beginning, the system engenders what we see in reality. So the system, and people use the system and think I'm talking about something far away. I'm not talking about anything far away. I'm talking about the structures of how we're governed, how power is distributed, how you get power, how it's distributed, how it's contained, how it's exercised, right? Creates a certain voter outlook, it creates a party outlook, and it creates a government outlook, how they do things. And what we're seeing with PUDP is a product of the structures that we have. We will never get a different set of group 2 or 3 parties that give us clear platform differences. We will never get that in the current system. What we have been doing, and I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about, what we've been doing is relying on individuals individuals of good conscience to come forward and lead us to the promised land. And we're constantly disappointed. Not because the people who have come forward have been necessarily intrinsically bad people, but because the system does not allow them to be good. To win, you have to be bad. In other words, you have to play along with what's going on, right?
Like, for example, in the cabinet, there's collective agreement, regardless to the fact that you, an individual minister, might have your own leaning, etc. When you sit down in here, the all we have to make that decision.
Yes, but the decisions led by that's a whole different thing, how the cabinet functions.
Yeah.
But to give you just a quick example.
What I'm saying is that even though you may project a certain,
when you get in there, it's a different thing.
You got to understand. You know, this is not out there in a campaign. You know, this is how we run here. And we've got the cabinet decision that is made by.
But let me just give you one example because I want to give Dr. Vernon a chance to turn on this. I'm doing some interviews with people in Belize, and one of the persons said, I asked them, what do we need constitutional reform? And the person says, no, we don't need much reform. What we need is good people to get into it. I said, but you got into it and you were a good person and things collapsed around you. So are you saying that you are not the right person or you weren't a good person? So it can't just be good people. Because of the people who put themselves forward, who think they're going to do good, and when they get in there, they find that they're completely hamstrung, and not hamstrung is the right word, but their efforts are dissipated by the way the structure is set up.
So, but how are you going to end up, and you could jump in here, Dylan, how are you going to change the system then?
How
we just gone through this exercise of a PCC, which is supposed to then make recommendations to deal with the sacred document which is called the Constitution, which supposedly will evolve into a different kind of system if we follow.
The document is not sacred. The rights are inalienable. Not sacred.
All right.
Inalienable.
All right. Okay.
They're human. Not sacred.
All right. Well, you know, you have to understand my biases.
Yeah.
So
I totally agree with Dr. Young on this.
And that's fine, but the biases should not be reflected in governing documents.
All right. So how do you change that?
I mean, that's the million-dollar question. I mean, I was saying during the break, agreeing that the system, that the problem, that what we haven't done effectively since we won independence is to decolonize what we inherited, including the Constitution, how we are governed, rights, social economic rights, and how we operate our system. And no political party since independence has any interest, it seems, in doing that in a comprehensive way. And I was saying during the break, if at least one of the parties had some of that, we would have some difference.
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be ideological. But there's no party that puts decolonization on the agenda of their party's platform. It's like a bad word. But if the system is the problem, as we're saying, where did the system come from?
Right.
It came from our colonial past, where we inherited a constitution that was a blueprint for the region that the British basically designed. And it is not working for our needs today in 2025. We know that, we see it, we feel it. The reason that people feel uninterested in elections, the reason that people would want to say, well, let me see what I can get more and more and more, is because the system doesn't allow anything else right now. Now, to get from that to where we need to be, as some people would say, requires a revolution, and perhaps not with the arms on the streets, but George Price used to call it a peaceful constructive revolution.
Yeah.
And we have not had that.
No.
In fact, after independence, it seemed that we won freedom and everybody stop. There was no vision after that as to where this country should go by any political leader on both sides, in my estimation.
So you're saying that the vehicle that we were driving in, which was the colonial masters, they simply got out of the seat, we, the nationals, got in the seat and continue along the same line, the same vehicle.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
In essence, yes. So, that's a good analogy.
So I think to build on what Dylan was saying, Dr. Vernon was saying, to show the depth of it, of this failure to decolonize, right? And people say, oh, it was 45 years ago, but it's a mental thing. Let me just give you one quick example of what we're up against, how ingrained it is, How ingrained it is, right? So in 1983, when A History of Belize came out, somebody wrote to the Minister of Education, who was Said Musa at the time, and said, and I quote from the letter the person wrote, "Slavery was bad, yes, but not as bad as that. It can be painted to look better. Where would the Creoles and Garifuna be if it weren't for slavery? Not here, certainly, not even alive." No, that may say, oh, that was 40-something years ago, right? But that idea that we have somehow liberated ourselves or taken the next step away from 1981 is false. This sort of thing is still there. And it sounds really basic what I'm saying, but it's true. We seem unable to have the confidence to move, and we've done some really important things. I'm not going to dismiss everything that's been done. We've done some really important things, but we seem unable to muster the, what's the word?
Political will.
The political will, yes, the political will. Political minds to move forward.
When we look at this argument, which is really, what you're saying is really happening throughout the Caribbean.
It's not just Belize.
We're not developing the mind in the Caribbean to really replace the mentality that we've inherited. In fact, along with the American neo-colonialistic thinking, we're now adopting a new form of self-slavery based on that system. And I say that
and when there were attempts in Grenada, a bit in Guyana, a bit in Trinidad and Tobago, it was crushed.
Exactly. And one would say that if UBAD had in fact evolved into a political party, it would have been a new dual movement version right here in Belize, which would have resulted in the same kind of response from the powers that be. Because the powers that be in the United States does not want us to become other than where we are. And this is what we're looking at with Cuba. We don't dare stand up and begin to praise Cuba in the face of the Americans for fear that they are going to say, how dare you try to change that.
Palestine.
Let me make a point about what you just said. To go back to the point I'm making. What you mentioned about UBAD. what happened to UBAD is because of the system. And we have the same system. UBAD would never have evolved into what you just said because the system does not engender that, doesn't support that.
But you have to break the system, and that's what Morris Bishop and them were trying to do.
Yes, but
They're trying to say, let's remove that and replace it.
But once you use the term, if it had involved it, I'm saying it would not have.
All right. You're
because
saying
the structure does not allow that.
All right, good.
And so if you want that sort of leadership, not just leadership, but that sort of ideas and foresight for development and policy thing to develop, you have to change the fertilizer.
And you're right. Where we do find, though, some element of trying to still continue that revolution, and it is a mental revolution, is with this movement towards so-called republicanism. You have been here as our guest to talk about that. That we think that getting rid of the Queen and replacing her with a president
or
something
or not,
that there's going to somehow, that's revolutionary.
Right.
Could you unpack that? Because there's echoes coming now from the Buseni administration that maybe during this period, 5 years, that we may be talking that kind of talk again. Is it real?
Well, it will not be real if that is the only thing they do.
Right. All right. We'll unpack it because I'm saying people are looking at it almost like the change of the money. That, if we put Mr. Golson and Mr. Pricelip on the money, we really come forward with a real change. So let's unpack real change from cosmetic change. That's what I'm asking.
I mean, one of the first things I always try to say in these discussions is that we have to understand the word republic, because it does not mean the banana republic of the Central America that most people think of. This is a negative term. Republic basically means that the people, the majority of the people, determine their government, and the power lies with the people. That's what republic means. And you can have a republic that is parliamentary, or you can have a republic that is presidential. Or in between. Like Guyana has a mixed approach. So the term republic is neutral.
Right.
It's not. All it means is that you don't have a monarch as head of state.
That's all it means.
That's all it means. And so getting that clear is important. Then, when it comes to Belize, I think that it is possible that the present government could indeed, in the next 5 years, remove the king as head of state, and we become a republic. We don't have to call ourselves a republic, but we will be by definition. And say we have done political reform. And clearly, if that is the only thing that is done within the same structure as has been done in Barbados so far, and a couple other countries, Trinidad, it doesn't make a difference in the systemic sort of changes that we need. It's not decolonization except in a symbolic way. So it has to go further than that. And my fear is that it won't go much further than that. But people will feel good about it. But the last poll that was done in Belize on this issue showed that the majority of Belizeans, or the most Belizeans, were opposed, this was about 4 years ago, to Belize becoming a republic. It was, I think, 40...
But maybe because of believing of it being Guatemala.
Yes. Oh, that was said.
There was no implication.
Right. People saying in public that they don't want to be like Guatemala. It's like, no.
And then a Guatemalan claim. But the fact that I mean, there's no connection between the two, because I always say if we become a republic, it would be even more identifying ourselves as independent and as separate and as unique. It's not. People, I think, fear the security issue. The last thing I'll say there, Nuri, is that if we do not have more than just the king changing the symbolic thing, we do back at where we are.
We'll talk about the same things in the 5 years election. We'll talk about the same problems that we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, the reality on the ground, and I think this is what the cynicism about PUDP is in the minds of many people. Yes, I couldn't get a house there, but I get a house now, and therefore the party that gave me the house is really my party because I'm getting a house, or I'm getting a loan, or I'm getting a scholarship. But the people right next door to me, I don't worry about Uno. Even though if the system were changed, it would be that there's a fair opportunity for all. But it's fair for me because I get one chance to send my son to university and government paid for it. So clientism then, as your book intimated, is not really only in Belize. If you understand the concept of it, even Trump did want clientelism situation. So unpack the idea on what they call steroids. So let us look at this thing of clientelism. And in your book, you kind of, you look at it as something that is real, but something that we ought not to be paying people and maintaining that when I get in, then I have to pay back those who put me in. When will that change? How can that change when I'm in such a deprived state and I had to wait my turn? Right. And now my turn come. You may get your turn, so stop criticizing this on my turn now. So how do you get rid of this idea of clientelism?
Just how we get rid of the become a republic beyond the king, just how we change our electoral system, it has to be some sort of transformation.
Yes. But then that
revolution.
Let's go back to what we just said. What we just talked about. The reason we see clientelism at the level it's at is created by the system that we have. You will not stamp it out in the current system. So putting a electoral campaign reform law will not stamp it out.
It's going to be
increasing the penalties for what we have in the book now. I'm sorry, what we have in the books now about buying increasing the penalties to $50,000 will not stop it because the system is engendering, it's fertilizer for this kind of behavior. And I've been a big defender of the voter in the sense that the decision to vote for a party in the current system, the decision to vote for a party because I got my bill pay or I got a piece of land is completely rational.
It's completely rational.
It's completely rational.
It's a common sense thing.
Yeah,
it's not only rational. People see it as normal. Yeah. Young people growing up in the system knowing nothing else.
Right.
Actually see that as normal. Some politicians don't even know it's wrong.
Yeah, those are the tools that the voter has in their toolbox, and that's the basis on which you're making decisions.
Doctors,
it doesn't make it right.
Just give me a second.
And the impact it has on the rest of the system is where we are.
I was talking to a politician a couple of days ago. He told me a couple of women, approached him. He was at a little function. And the first words the women asked him, so that we under for the minister. And he trying to come from some moral position. No, they're not where I under for you. That way you under for yourself. And what can I do to facilitate the process? Why are you not a waste matter? What you give me?
Yeah. How I put it in a recent article is that we are trapped in this sort of cycle where a big portion of the electorate need handouts for economic survival,
right?
But the politicians need it for political survival, and that's how we're trapped in that. I mean, breaking that requires the same sort of transformation that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And you were asking about how to get there, and it's a tough question. I mean, other than taking up arms and going to the hills of Mountain Pine Ridge, the SPARE formula, the Society for the Promotion of Education and Research, that began in '69 but was resurrected in 1988, was just to be one of those organizations that would do the hard work that is needed to get the critical mass. That is
education,
popular education. Showing people the commonalities across ethnicities and across districts, and getting to a point.
These political parties we have now adapt that and say conscientization, as we used to call it then, is my ideology. Well, don't even use ideology. It is my format. I will go out there and I will put the educational system, in other words, Mr. Rekenya, you've got to understand that this is not just STEM and other things so that we can compete in the existing world, but we want to change the system at its root. Do you see any of the present political parties thinking in that way?
If they, it could happen. I'm not saying it can't happen.
Sure,
right?
sure.
But will it happen? Probably not.
Why?
Because they have not allowed themselves to see, and I mean that deliberately. They have not allowed themselves to see or be exposed to a path that can transform the electoral system without threatening the party's power. And that is possible. They will, if you are in power, you do not reform so it's going to put you out of power. You do not change it so you get put out of power. They're not going to do that. You have to run that balance. And we need to show, or be given the opportunity to show what are the alternatives that can guarantee, or not guarantee, that can promote stability in government, electoral responsiveness, representation, reflection of people's vote, stability in government, ability to make decisions of the government, and ability to constrain the powers of government. Those 5 things right there. Or you could maybe get down to 3. But those things, they are not convinced. They are not convinced. The powers that be, the political elite and the economic elite, are not convinced and have not allowed themselves the opportunity to even look at a way that this could be done because they think it's going to dislodge their interests.
Well, isn't it naive for anyone to believe that the system will dismantle itself? No, it will not happen. So therefore, what is the responsibility then of educators? What is the responsibility of media? How important it is if you want to change this in the next 10 years and government will not move in that direction because it diminishes their power base, both parties.
Or they think so?
No, clearly it is, because they are now in a system that enriches them and they're justified by saying, enrich me so I can enrich you. The idea is that I want to do a groundswell, you say, from the time of the groundwork that was being done by SPARE. The going out into the villages, the mosquito and battle ass. Where is that group that says, well, listen, we're not running for just a 5-year term. We don't need to worry about Uno Day. We need to worry about this generation that in 20 years will replace this. See, when Fidel Castro was moving and when all of these ideologues were moving, they were not moving with immediacy. They were moving with long-range plans that you cannot unpack or unhitch a generational problem with a short 5-year term. So even if we jump up and say to the electorate, yeah, we got the power and we want to do so and so and so, wait and say, fool the talk but not a fool to listen, because you will know you can't do that change in a 5-year period. So when are those persons, and I'm putting you both on the spot, who know what should be done, will get into a position to be able to start to change minds? And it's not changing old heads as me, but change young minds to ensure that they will not just carry on with the system with the same old, same old. I put it on you because really it's the groundwork that is not being done. We're just criticizing and throwing stone against what is there.
I put it on all of us.
Yes, of course. I'm saying the media.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, I personally have been writing a lot as one of my outlets to kind of get out information to people, but also forge some ideas. But yes, we need more of this pair approach. And the institute I am right now, the Belize Policy Research Institute at UB, will be doing some of that within the UB community.
Students.
And maybe, in fact, beyond to some extent, but it's one organization, and there's a need for a SPARE in each district in a sense. It requires dedication, leadership, money, but mostly it requires from the very beginning an understanding that it needs to be done, and having enough people believe that it needs to be done. And I think Asad Schumann was at the launch of Belpre on Monday, and he gave a talk called To Think or to Transform. And the transformation part, and one of the points he made is that one of the things we have not transformed, we have not decolonized, is our educational system itself. And apart from the systemic changes that need to happen, if we haven't done that, then the minds we are creating, the output of that educational system, are not people who want systemic change, because the teaching of history, the understanding of how the system works, you don't get that in school. And so, I mean, in the long term, I mean, thinking realistically, that's where to begin. This thing won't happen overnight. And I maintain that our educational system, with all the money that's been poured into it, has still failed the Belizean people, since independence especially.
Let's stop there. We'll take our next break, and we'll come back and continue. And those who are calling, just give us patience. We promise we will open the phone lines so we can do the dialogue.
En Belice valoramos
All right, welcome back, and we're going to just deal with this area and then open up the phone lines because some of you are calling, you definitely want to get in. I want to look at the impact of two areas. The fact that we have serious demographic changes in Belize over the last 40 years. We've inherited an idea that this was a black country. We were growing up with this idea, kind of looking at the stats, where there was 70-odd% of the community or the country being black. And that was the stats if you look at the census. But clearly, when you look over the last 70 years, that black population has been reduced drastically down to less than 30% of the population. And it is not that the Banya mestizo has exponentially grown to be large, but by the infusion of those who came from the Central America, who are also mestizo, have made it appear as if we've had this dramatic change. And it is real. I'm saying that the impact of that, and when you put that together with that large percent of blacks didn't die.
They left and went to the States.
They migrated.
So the point...
And so, let me finish, Dr. Young. They actually represent a significant demographic of Belize, but they're left out of the process. We don't want to hear about diaspora engaging in any governance sort of process. So come in now and add that together.
Yeah, I'm going to push
the challenge.
The way you presented it gives the idea that there was some mass plot or conspiracy.
No. I'm saying the reality.
The language you use suggests that. The language you use to describe it suggests that.
You get that impression, but that is not my intent.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's not my intent.
I'm saying, when I hear what you said, it sounds like you're suggesting that.
Okay.
And my response to that is, yes, the observation is correct. The demographics have changed.
Okay.
But the demographics have changed for a lot of times for reasons outside the control of Belize. Part of it is Belizeans, black Belizeans, Afro-Belizeans, and some Latino Belizeans left and went to the States. And the majority of them, the vast majority of them left with no intention of coming back. None. They were turning their backs on Belize. Totally. And that's their prerogative, which I was one of the people who went to the States at one point, and I have come back. So I'm not putting myself like I'm some sort of, model or anything.
Many of us that came back.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. But the point is...
I think you're missing my point.
No, I'm not missing your point. I'm not
saying.
missing your point. I am acknowledging your point.
I think what Harold is saying is that this migration and demographic change was almost inevitable in terms of our geographical presence, so it's a reality.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I will say after Harold is done is that how have we as a country, though, in policy terms, dealt with that? We have not.
All right,
yeah.
good.
No,
that's it. And listen, we're saying the same thing in different ways. I am saying that as a backdrop to the question of how do we deal with two challenges. That clear demographic change on the ground and that diasporan group over there that we have not consciously tried to engage. We have the mindset that we don't want to come back, we're left on hold. But look at the dramatic change now where they're being threatened with mass deportation.
But that's not our responsibility. That is not our responsibility.
It is our responsibility if they end up on the ground. If they end up here, it is our
reality. The
reality.
United States is not our responsibility.
No, I'm not worried about their policy. I'm talking about the reality of if they return here, how are we going to deal with the reality of that?
And I'm saying yes, you need to, but honestly, let me just be very clear. I am not dismissing what you're saying, but my focus, what I can do in my sphere is not focus on that.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I'm not saying that people mustn't focus on it.
No, we have to.
You could look at it.
Yeah.
But I want, just like how I made a point of saying I want to big up or compliment the people who went out and voted, I want to reiterate the strength of the people who stayed here and made this what it is today with all its faults. We need to give the people who stayed here credit for where we are today. Now, not everything is great. Some things you could say have regressed, but overall, we need to give them credit, and they should not be put aside or stepped on by any other group.
I don't think we're saying that.
No, I'm not saying you're saying that, but what I'm saying is, I mentioned, hold on, Nuri, my focus is that those are the people that I need to work with. Those are the people that will want to do. I listen to the diaspora, the Belams. I listen to them. I listen to them on social media, and some of the things they say are absolutely regressive, false, misled, some of it deliberately misleading, and some of the people are quite prominent in the diaspora population. But and they're right to say whatever they want to say. But my focus is not on that. I'm not saying I will never participate in anything to do with that, but my focus is what is going on here. I'm interested in structural transformation we were talking about to make the people that stayed here, the people that are here, the children who came down, the generation who come down, to be a better Belize and profit from making Belize better. Okay. And that's my focus.
I share some of that, but maybe slightly different. I believe that the diaspora is important. It is important economically in terms of remittances. It is important because of family ties. The governments, plural, over the past years have tried to have diaspora programs. There's now a minister of diaspora, an ambassador of diaspora. But almost superficial so far. There needs to be a clear policy on how we engage the diaspora. And yes, there are some, as in Belize, there's some good ideas and there's some bad ones from my perspective. Now, the core issue that you mentioned is, I think, voting in elections. And I am mulling over that issue, but my sense on that is that unless it is part of this systemic reform we are talking about, I am not willing to say yes yet.
Exactly. Okay.
And that is because the first past the post system, where elections are won by 10, sometimes few votes, people who do not live in a constituency can, if you're allowed to vote from the US. I mean, and you will see if people register, it could be what, 1/3 of the entire vote? I don't know.
No.
And so people who don't live here or pay taxes here, or most important for me, are part of the reality of the dialogue that is happening and feel what is happening, it's hard for me right now to agree that they should have the vote in this context.
Right.
Okay. And then you have transparency issues.
I support what you're saying.
Let me clarify. I was not even talking about the vote.
Okay.
I was talking about the reality which cannot be denied, that we have in excess of 100, perhaps even more. When you think about it exponentially, we probably have 200-300 Belizeans over the last 60, 70, 80 years in the United States. All right. We see them mostly from the box coming home, the remittances, etc., which has played an important part of our economy. And yes, there is a part of that Belizean diaspora group that wants to participate in the vote. My sense is the majority of them are not interested in participating in the vote. What I'm saying is that leadership needs to begin creatively to saying, how am I going to incorporate that group? Just the way the Jews have incorporated every person that is a Jew that is any part of the world. You can have an input here. Not all of you come and sit in the Knesset. Not all of you come and make a vote. But you can find other ways creatively that you can make our vision of what Israel is about a reality. And it has worked very well for them, and they're not the only country that's done it. I am kind of like a Golsonite in this sense. That Mr. Golson said wherever there is a Belizean, he should or she should be considered a part of what our original vision is. I am not of that old thinking that if you may want to stay here, you may stay here, and so when you stay across there, and I love and respect the one that will stay here. Some of them will stay here if they may get a chance to go, and the US wasn't so strict on their visa policy, they would have been there too. Because people naturally want to go where they feel that they can get more. If we had the opportunity to go for education in the United States and then come back to Belize, many would have taken that advantage. But people, you had to work so hard to get across it. You had to belong to almost a class before you had the freedom to be able to go to the United States and decide, even if you want to come back. I came back 50 years ago. Nobody forced me. I came back and got engaged. Sure. So the point is that policymakers at this time don't consider the diaspora as even a factor in the future of Belize.
And we cannot consider these things
we don't even
transformation of the system that we're working
we don't
in.
we're going to transform the system.
If we don't have if we don't have national if we don't have national migration policy for Belize,
yeah, exactly.
How can we have diaspora policy?
Exactly.
We don't even have migration policy. We don't even have language policy.
Well, this is why you're here. I'm here to present you the question. And it's up to you, really, and you've given your opinion. All right, now we open the phone line so that we can get dialogue with you. We have been kind of, all these pundits are back and forth. So, but no, and I'm not dismissing the importance of what is being said here. Really, this is an education, especially for young people who don't know nothing about what is going on and need to hear people who have been studying and been engaged for years, and so it becomes an opportunity to learn. So, and don't take this back and forth as anything hostile or negative. I have great respect for these brothers, and I believe that they respect me for who I am. So we'll take the break, and when we come back, our phone lines will be open for you to engage in the conversation for this morning. Thank you.
Enhanced service and
All right, welcome back. We're at the point now for opening up the phone lines. Our number is 2805848. You're welcome to call. We ask you to make it specific, or I should say precise, so that we are able to broaden as many calls as we can. 2805848. Another area is this demographic of young people. And when you had the forum a few weeks ago at UB, you had some brilliant young people, each making their presentation as to which part of this camel or this elephant that they were really looking at. And it was some dynamic presentations, and you both made, comments on what these students were talking about, including Brother Dennison and Sister Sandford. But the idea here, and the question is, over 65% of our population are young people, but they are not engaged in the governance process outside of observers and sitting listening to those who supposedly know to educate them. But if I'm listening carefully to what you all are saying, we're sort of doing the same old that we have done. So how will we break out of that and engage the energy, the intuitiveness, the innovative ideas of these young persons with respect, rather than just, we got a group of youth here and then they can talk and then they don't finish. No. How are we going to dynamically involve them?
You know, my own personal experience, and I have to go back to the despair. When I was a young man, becoming conscious, still naive and growing up, it was a spare that got me involved, talking more in depth and talking to your peers and getting some conscientization going, and that is what is still the formula for me. And with the Belize Policy Research Institute at UB, some of that is planned. We have student clubs that we're going to be forming, but that needs to happen in a wider way. Yeah. But the youth, the young people at UB who spoke at that March 4th event, one of the things that I remember them saying is, we feel neglected, we feel that we're not being listened to. At the same time, they didn't have any real answers to, how do we listen to you? But they feel, and at least the five of them who were there, that they want to be more involved. And so it's not that there are no youth out there who want to be involved in a way, but there's no clear sort of avenue as to how they will do that. And the political parties, in fact, all of them, I think to a student, were saying that they wanted something other than that, if you listen to what they were saying. They both all had critiques of how things were going. But I think, getting the youth involved is the spare formula that we perfected in the 1980s and 90s is still the way to go. I embrace the responsibility I have to be a part of that. And I'm doing so in my own way.
My brother?
Yeah, I echo what Dan said, the approach. I think we need more of that. But I also want to encourage the youth to...
Can I stop just
sure,
to make sure?
Sure.
Welcome, caller. Welcome.
Hello?
Yes, welcome.
Hi. Did I get in here? Am I on the air?
You're on there.
All right.
Yes, you're on the air.
All right. Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, my three wonderful, handsome, and intelligent friends. This is Metallic good. I would like for you guys to touch a little bit more on the constitutional reform that you guys was a part of. I think I heard last night in the news that there's a report submitted. Could you guys touch on that a little bit more for me, please?
That's a good question. Thank you very much, caller. Thank you very much. The PCC.
Hi, Nuri.
Yes, my dear.
Yeah, I heard on the news 2 days ago that the PCC, in fact, they had a press release that they're calling it, I suppose, a draft report is being shared with the PCC constituents, the 20 plus members, for them to go out into their organizations and do some final consultations. And they asked specifically that the report not be discussed publicly during this time. It's only internal. I don't know how that will work.
I don't either.
But, and then they say in May, by the 15th of May, they will present the final to the Prime Minister. The timetable seems very short, but we can only wait for the final report. I mean,
using your example of the next or the other big effort to look at our governance process in a global way, which was the Reform Commission back in 1999, and comparing it to the process that this was going through, which is, to me, comparison of at this large level. Without getting personal, just comparing. Yours came up with some recommendations, some were accepted, some were not. Is this the process again, that some will be presented to the Prime Minister, some will be accepted, and others will be not? Is that where we're going through? Your turn.
Yeah. So there's a very big difference between the two.
All right.
We can compare them because we need to to understand, but there's a very big difference.
All right.
And I think we need to be clear about how this commission was set up and why it's important, and maybe anyway. So the commission that we're seeing now was created by law. Okay. It wasn't just what do you call yours? Like a verbal mandate? Executive mandate. Yeah. This was a law was created and gave the commission the power to present basically anything to the Prime Minister. They could present 3 amendments, or they could present a brand new constitution. That's how wide the mandate is, right? They could do any of that. The other big difference is that the executive mandate that when Dr. Brown was the chair was, and I don't mean this in a bad way, it was a kind of a blue ribbon committee. So they brought together people who were interested and with expertise and brought different dimensions to it. This one is a lot different. This one is the government, the mandate says that we feel the need, the government feels the need, so we pass this law for some sort of look at the Constitution, and look at it, and we're going to task the civic organizations who represent the constituencies around the country to do that. That's a completely different approach. Not a viable approach. I'm not criticizing it, I'm saying it's just a different approach. So what we saw, instead of how many people on your commission?
14.
14.
Yeah.
Instead of 14, I had 28. Right? And 28 people of really different interests, and which is kind of what you want. But that makes the process more challenging. And this is the last part. And Dr. Vernon and I were both cut out of the process very early on, so we can't speak to a lot of what went on with that. But what I want to see is, will it be superficial tinkering, or will it be a real comprehensive look at the foundations of and where we want to go and what we're trying to achieve and how we structure it to achieve that? Or is this going to be tinkering with little things?
The only other difference, in fact, for me, I think the most important difference with 1999 and now is that leading up to 1999, SPARE had a 4.5-year campaign on political reform that included education at every level. And so we had a critical mass in my head, I mean in my mind, of people who were interested.
Right.
There were concrete proposals being discussed out there. Civil society organized in a major way and presented a People's Manifesto before the 1998 election with recommendations. And so the work that the Political Reform Commission did was based on a demand from the people and concrete ideas already coming from the people. That did not happen this time. And the process, and I have yet to see all the information they got in and all that, but the process meant that it had to be education, public education, as a big part of their process. How successful that was is left to be seen. I have my doubts.
Nice. Well, we have no choice but to bring this to a close, but it's an ongoing conversation. I'm glad you both were here. You shed light in an area that I think a lot of our citizens really need to take in and go do their own research. I don't think any of you came here with the idea that you have the solution to the problem, but you were adding information to force us to think through the process. I appreciate your being here. You did an excellent, even the organizing on the part of Harold wasn't there, but it was all good because we got to be dynamic. We can't be passive and try to be so nice in addressing issues that affect us. And he was clearly affected, as I was affected, by some of these things. You were the cool one today. So we hope that we'll be able to do this again. We want to thank all those who listen.
Can I have a final word?
Yeah. You want to
I will close.
All right. Well, I'll go back to what Finnegan and what the Amandala show used to say. We have your closing point, right? Or shooting point.
For me, my closing point is related to foreign affairs. We are in a very sort of perilous international situation these days with the new administration in the U.S. But a part of it that I always want to stress on these shows is let's not forget the people of Palestine who once again are under bombardment from the Israelis. And the genocide that the International Court of Justice is exploring and says is likely happening is continuing. Innocent people being killed, and the objective is to get the Palestinians out of Gaza. Whatever we can do as individuals, and I urge my own government to be opposed to that and to be on the side of the Palestinians, I make that appeal.
Right side of history.
Yeah.
My closing remarks have to do with the last point that we started on, to do with youth and youth involvement. And I think it's important that, and this is not just a youth message for the youth, it's for everybody, but let's focus on the youth, that the level of involvement does not have to be the same across the board. Not everybody is going to become a researcher and become a speaker, but what we're asking youth is to engage in the area, in the sphere, in the capacity in which they're at. If you want to pursue political science and study it, then do that. If you want to be involved in, just start off at your school, in the student union, the student organization, do that. If you want to be something in the neighborhood, you do that. If you want to go join a political party, go join a political party. The point is, don't feel that there's some blueprint that you have to follow to be effective. You need people to be acting, operating in all the different areas of society, in the spheres of life. And we need to find that niche and do that.
Very important. And we can't think that one size fits all.
Exactly. And that's where you exercise power.
Yeah. All right. This is our last call. Caller, go ahead, please.
Yes, 60-second ceremony. Salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam. You did this yesterday, brother. You look like you like the last minute call. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, the thing is that I heard early you was not answering to our people. The only thing I want to say to you is that on the topic you talked before, I was 100% agree and support when they say Belize government was supporting Palestine. I can't support into that. And the last thing to close, if it's possible for you to give me a call so I could share something with you for a minute after
okay.
there,
Okay.
if you could.
You want to give me your number or how you want to do that? I could give you mine. Which one you want? Because I don't have your number in on my phone.
Yeah, you know, see, you cannot show them where you are.
Yeah, I think it is. All right, yeah, I think I could do a back thing on it. Yeah. All right, I will get the number and I will call you after the show, all right?
All right, peace.
Okay, I will, my brother. Take care. Good. That's all right. Yeah, so thank you both, Dr. Harold Young and Dr. Dylan Vernon, for being our guests today. It was provocative, educational, and I think it makes a difference to those who were paying attention.
You were one of the few people in terms of your talk show that allows this level of depth and discussion. Very, very hard to find this kind of space.
Much appreciated, yeah.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
All thanks. All right, so we want to thank Mr. Clifton Lewis, the man that does everything around here. He keeps us in line because he knows everything that we do here at XTV and in fact, Creme Radio. Today our MCO was Miss Kalexi Bilide. Downstairs we had Anthony Grant, and of course most important was your engagement of just listening and participating in thoughts, and hopefully this will make a difference in your own life and your own future, particularly you young people. So we say Belizeans, stand strong and stand firm, especially now. Do the right thing. And for now, we gone!
Wake up, Belize. Another day is here. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. We gotta keep moving, na 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 na. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Everybody gotta put their time in. Wake up, Belize. Wake up, Belize. Voice our opinion and place your calling. Be yourself, see yourself. This is a show by people. Belize our hopes are to needless reason. Nobody feel left out. It's the vibe we dealing. Let's find a solution. Yeah, yeah, yeah.